They say the Arctic preserves things. You drop a body in the ice, and 1,000 years later, it looks like it's just sleeping. That's a lie. The Arctic doesn't preserve, it just hides the rot. I'm standing here, looking at the gray waves of the Barents Sea, and my hands are shaking. Not from the cold. Never from the cold. My hands shake because I can still feel the heat. Not fire, but that wet, invisible heat that comes from the bottom of a concrete pool. February 1982, Andreev Bay. We didn't just break a machine that day. We didn't just crack a fuel rod. I broke my own blood. I broke my sister's son. You want to know what 17,000 Roentgens looks like? It doesn't look like a mushroom cloud. It looks like blue water. Beautiful, electric blue water. And it looks like my nephew screaming while I stood there and watched him burn. Let's back up. Before the alarms. Before the panic. You have to understand what Andreev Bay was. On the maps, it didn't exist. In reality, it was the garbage can of the Northern Fleet. Building number 5. That was our cathedral. A massive concrete box designed to hold the spent fuel from nuclear submarines. Technical base, they called it. I called it a warehouse for death. But here's the joke. I thought it was safe. I was a Senior Warrant Officer. I'd seen what happens on the boats. Fires in the compartments, high-pressure steam leaks that slice a man in half. So when Sasha, my nephew, my sister Katya's only boy, when he got drafted, I panicked. He was barely 19. Thick glasses. Always reading books about navigation. He wasn't built for the engine room. I pulled every string I had. I called my sister. I told her, "Don't worry, Katya. I'll take him. He won't go on the submarines. He'll stay with me." I promised her. He'll be safe. It's just storage, Katya. We guard the pool. We smoke. We go home. He trusted me. He called me Uncle Vicha, even in front of the officers. So I kept him in Building 5. Safe. Under my wing. We spent the winter of '81 playing cards in the control room. The northern lights were dancing outside. And inside, we were sitting on top of enough radioactive material to poison the entire ocean. But the concrete, it looked solid. We didn't know that the blueprint was already decaying. The design had a fatal flaw. Not the physics, the arrogance. They built a pool to hold boiling hot uranium rods in the middle of the freezing Arctic. And they made the walls out of cheap concrete. Hot inside, freezing outside. Expansion, contraction. Physics doesn't care about your family. Physics just cracks. It started in February. A drip, just a tiny wet sound in the silence of the hall. Drip, drip. The right pool, the water level was dropping. 30 tons a day. That water wasn't just water, it was a radioactive shield. Without it, the fuel rods at the bottom would start to interact. They'd heat up, they'd shine. We ran to the command. "The pool is leaking," I said. "We need to evacuate." You know what the brass said? "Fix it." With what? I asked. We don't have special sealants. We don't have robots. They sent us flour. 20 bags of baking flour. I'm not making this up. It sounds like a bad comedy, right? We were standing there in our chemical suits, mixing dough. like we were making bread for the devil. We poured the sticky mess into the cracks, hoping it would clog the leak. The smell. God, I can still smell it. Wet dough and ozone. Sasha was there shoveling the mix. He looked at me, sweat fogging up his glasses inside his mask. "Is this going to work, Uncle Vitya?" he asked. I lied. I lied to his face. "Yeah, kid, it's science. Don't worry." It didn't work. The leak got worse. The ice on the outer wall was glowing in the dark. 250 liters a day became 30 tons. The radiation levels spiked. We were walking on top of a nuclear volcano that was ready to blow. And then the decision came. "Move the fuel," they said. "Transfer the drums from the dry pool." It was a suicide mission, but we followed orders because that's what you do. The date was, it doesn't matter. It was the day my life ended. We were in the main hall. The air was thick with steam. It felt heavy, like it was pressing against your chest. We had to move the fuel drums. The floor was a mess of iron sheets covering the service pits. Old, rusted metal. I was supervising. I was the one in charge. Sasha was down by the edge of the dry pool. "Watch your step," I yelled over the hum of the ventilation. He gave me a thumbs up. He looked confident. Because his uncle was there. Because I said it was safe. The crane moved. A shadow passed over us. Sasha stepped back to guide the load. He stepped onto one of the iron sheets. It didn't bend. It didn't creak. It just vanished. It slid out from under him like a trapdoor. There was no time to scream. I saw his eyes. Just for a fraction of a second. He looked surprised. Not scared. Just surprised. And then he was gone. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I froze. For a heartbeat, I was a statue. Then the horror hit me. He fell into the dry pool. But it wasn't dry. It was filled with sludge, leakage, and fuel rods that had been dumped there years ago. And then I saw it. A flash. From the bottom of the pit, a blue light erupted. Cherenkov radiation. The sign that the air itself is being torn apart by neutrons. "Sasha!" I ran. I didn't care about the decimeter. It was screaming, a solid, high-pitched wail that meant death. Another guy, Semenov, he was faster. He jumped in. Crazy bastard. He jumped right into the soup. I grabbed the cable. I pulled. My gloves were slipping on the oil and sweat. "Pull!" We dragged them out. Sasha. He stood up. He was dripping wet. The water on his uniform was steaming. He took off his mask. His face was red. Bright red. Like a sunburn that happened in 3 seconds. He looked at me. He smiled a confused, drunk smile. The radiation does that to the nerves. It hits the nerves. "Vitya," he whispered. "It's warm. The water is warm." We dragged him to the showers. We scrubbed him. We used stiff brushes. We scrubbed until the water turned pink with blood. But you can't wash it off. It's not dirt. It's in the blood. It's in the bone marrow. The doctors came. Men in white coats who looked at him like he was a broken piece of equipment. They measured him. The needle on the device hit the limit and just stuck there. 17,000 Roentgens at the source. He absorbed enough energy to light up a city block. They didn't tell him he was dying. They just said, medical discharge, unfit for service. I went to see him one last time before they shipped him out. He was sitting on his bunk, staring at his hands. They were trembling. "I guess I don't get to go on a submarine, huh, Uncle Vitya?" he said. He tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough that sounded like wet gravel. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I wanted to say, "Forgive me, Katya." But I just said, "You're going home to your mom, Sasha. You're lucky. Lucky." He went home. My sister, she never spoke to me again. Not after she saw him. Not after she saw what I sent back to her. He lived for a few years, if you can call that living. His organs failed one by one. The decay ate him from the inside out. I stayed. I stayed in Building 5. I breathed that air for another 10 years. Why? Because I deserved it. Now, the building is a ruin, a tomb of concrete and rust. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that blue light, and I see the flower, the white dough we tried to paste over the cracks of an empire. We thought we were engineers. We thought we were masters of the atom, but we were just children playing with fire in a paper house. And the fire, it never really goes out. It just waits.
Subscribe to the channel. History must not decay to ash.